I just can't. I really think this world's gone mad. I think people have gone nuts. I think people are crazy. This is madness. I'm sorry, you guys. Just with a heavy heart, I do the show today. I guess what I'll say is my thoughts and my prayers go out to the community in Texas, Baton Rouge, France. I mean, God, I shouldn't have to name off so many places. And my hearts go out to the families in Baton Rouge, the fallen police officers. I know there's one, as you hear this broadcast right now, there's one police officer fighting for his life. And it's got to stop. I mean, this is madness. This is complete madness. I'm sorry, guys. I know you guys aren't here for this. I know you guys aren't here to listen to this, but I feel like, I guess what I'll say is my thoughts, my prayers go out to the families. Let's ask God to take care of our fallen police officers and watch over the ones that are there to protect us. Focus, Wes, focus. Let's, if you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, please go to the website, check out the website, sasquatchchronicles.com. If you enjoy the show, please become a member, help support the show. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Greg to the show. Greg, thanks for coming on tonight.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And if you would, kind of start from the beginning. I mean, I got your email about your family's encounters, and I probably read it 3 or 4 times. I was fascinated by it. If you would, kind of start from the beginning. When did your mom and talk to you about what was going on around the property, and when did all that start?
The year that took place was she was 14, so it would have been 1958. The first time I heard the story, I was probably 6 or 7. We used to periodically go to the movies, and I saw the ad for the movie Sasquatch, and she took me. And right after that movie is when she told me the story, that she had never put 2 and 2 together until she saw that movie and was able to kind of go, that's what I saw. She goes, it's kind of weird. It dawned on me after all these years. It was something she had kind of put in the back of her mind. I always enjoyed hearing her tell the tale.
And what was the story? What did she tell you?
Well, the story was they lived in Elkhorn City, Kentucky. This is southeastern Kentucky, very near to Virginia. There's a place there called the Breaks, where it's a line between Virginia and Kentucky. It's like the Grand Canyon of the East, they call it. Very mountainous area. Small little mountain towns, like you see on TV a lot. Close-knit neighborhoods, houses are few and far between, but everybody knew each other through church and school. Everybody went to the same school. She lived across the road from a little general store, and a lot of the teenage kids would sit over there and talk. And it was an afternoon during the summer. They had walked over to the store to get a bottle of pop, her and my aunt being older than her. I think my aunt was 17 at the time. They went in and got a bottle of pop, came out and sat down on the bench outside the store, and we're talking and looking across the road back at their house. And behind the house, the mountain range came down right to their backyard. The backyard's probably no more than 10 to 12 feet from where the hill started going up into the mountains. Very wooded area, a lot of cut roads through the mountain area to get to the other homes, homemade roads, what they call hollers down there. Behind the house was an old field where my great-grandmother used to have sheep. It was like a saddle between the peaks, so it'd be like an open meadow with lots of trees and brush on either side. While sitting there, she noticed what she thought was somebody walking at the top end of the pasture, the old sheep pasture. And there was a trail up there that followed along, probably 80 to 100 yards away when she first saw someone, as she put it, walking. She really didn't pay much attention. She thought it might have been one of the neighbor kids out going for a walk or something. And she put her head down and talked a little bit more. And when she looked up, this figure was on the a little closer now, and it was on a road going along the top of the ridge. She started thinking, when she told me, that the person had really long hair from where she was sitting. She thought, well, you didn't see people with long hair back then. Everybody had short-cut hair. And she's looking, and then she noticed that the hair covered this figure's body. And she looked closer, and it really scared her what she saw. So she let out a scream, and my aunt's like, "What are you screaming about?" And she said, "Look up there on the sheep trail on the road." And right when she had screamed, it stopped and was looking at them. And like I say, 80 to 100 yards away. My aunt saw it and says, "What is that? What is that thing?" And they're going back and forth. So my aunt runs into the store and tells the store owner to please come outside and look at this thing. And he comes out and looks, and I guess she said he's a very boisterous, excited guy. And, I don't know what that GD thing is. It's some kind of wild man. So it had hunkered down and was watching them while they were watching it. And then after they stood and pointed a few times and watched it, she said maybe 2 or 3 minutes, it stood back up and continued walking out the ridge. It didn't run. It just walked for them, would turn and look back at them every so often. They could see it as far as it went, and it got into deeper timber to where they couldn't see it anymore.
Did she describe the length of the hair and kind of, was it long all over the body, or how did she describe it?
Yeah, she described the hair on the head being like to the shoulders, but it had a face, but she couldn't make out any details of the face, but she could see that the face did not have hair on it. And she said that she couldn't tell about a neck or anything, but the rest of the body, she said, it just looked like it was wearing the way she described it, like a dark brown or black suit. It was entirely covered. She could see no other skin showing except for the face. From that far away, she couldn't tell ears or anything like that, but she could tell that the face was not covered in hair, but it did hang down on its shoulders. I always asked her about, recently after I contacted you, I had her refresh me a little bit about it. I asked her about how tall she thought it was. My uncle, her brother, was 6'2", and she said it was easy a foot or more taller than him. That's what the store owner had talked to her about, that how big it was, wide and tall.
And that's interesting, too, kind of that, she's describing kind of that mop on the head that a lot of witnesses talk about. And if it would have been a person, I don't know that it would have really shook them up, especially being country people. I don't know that it really would have shook them up.
No. And that's the thing. The people were friendlier back then. They would see a stranger and say hello, but it wasn't anything like that. It shook all of them up pretty good. It shook them up to the point that they didn't want to leave the store until my grandpa got home from work. So they sat there with the store owner until he got home, and they didn't want to walk across the road, even though the house is in sight, even though they saw it walk away. She said it scared them so bad.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Incidents prior to that were mysterious to them was my grandma would leave the doors open on the house. She would they had 12 kids in the family, so breakfasts were a big thing. She had to cook for everybody. She would have leftover biscuits in a pan in the oven, and she would periodically walk up to my great-grandma's house to help her out as she was older. She comes home one day and finds the oven door open and the biscuit pan laid crossways on the door and a lot of the biscuits missing. So she thought one of the kids had done it. So she questioned all of them, and none of them were around to confess to the crime. She was accusing everyone of doing it, but they hadn't been the ones doing it. And she never thought anything about it. And then a few days later, it happens again. And this time she's sure no one's around because all the kids were gone off somewhere else. And my grandpa was actually staying, he was a coal miner, so he would actually stay at the mining houses, and they would come home on the weekends because it was so far to come back and forth from where the coal mine was at. And she knew it wasn't him, and she had gotten in contact with him. She had sent one of my uncles to the mining camp and told him what happened, And he told her, start locking the door while you're gone, because don't know who or what, was around doing that. Don't know why she, like she said, anybody that was hungry, she'd offer them and take them in and feed them. But to come in the house like that, it was really a mystery to her. And that was one thing. This was prior to the sighting. One other incident that happened there, my grandfather had a smokehouse, and he would butcher hogs during the fall to have meat during the winter. You had to have a lot of money to have a refrigeration system back then, and they were pretty poor. So they had the smokehouse where they kept meat all winter and would go out and get what they needed and bring it in. And he started noticing lots of pork missing, like whole hams, and I guess that's like the whole leg, the way she describes it to me, hanging, that would be gone out of the smokehouse. He was trying to keep an eye on that, and one night they had a chicken coop, and the chickens were really cutting up a ruckus. It was around 10:30, 11 o'clock. She said she remembers the time because they were all just sitting around talking, and it was pretty late, and they thought, well, what's causing that? Well, once in a while you'd have like bobcats or a wildcat, they called them, would come around, and they'd have to shoot them, or what are stray dogs, well, a lot of wild dogs. At that point, my father was dating my mother at that point. They were just kids, and my grandfather, he says, I guess, I don't know what's causing the noise. I got to go to bed because I got to head to mine camp in the morning. And my dad goes, well, I'll go out and check it out. And my grandma's little dog was just going nuts, but he wouldn't go outside. When he was going to shoo him out there and have him chase off whatever it was, he had a little terrier. And he wouldn't go outside. So my dad went out with the flashlight and would shine the light around. He didn't see anything near the coop. But there was a sassafras tree growing next to the chicken coop, next to the fence part. And he happened to shine the light on it, and there were scratches in the bark. And she told me they were probably about a half-inch wide, and spacing between them was about an inch, like something had clawed the tree. And she said it was way above where my dad could reach. So it was above 8 feet where it started and came down to about his chest level. My dad was probably 5'8", 5'9", so I was trying to gauge that the other night about how far it would be. So probably 4 to 5 feet of scratches in this tree. And my dad found that very odd because they weren't like sharp nail scratches; they were like wide, almost like chisel-like, like a screwdriver edge. You know what I mean? Like a squared off scratch. Because I've seen where bears mark a tree, and you could tell where the claws hit and dig in, and there's a definite. You could tell that those claws are pointed. And he told me this was not like that. And neighbors came from all around to look at these scratches in the tree that were next to the chicken coop. And I told her, I said, didn't anybody put this 2 and 2 together about what you guys had saw in the meadow and on the path and all the things going on there? And she said, no, nobody heard of Bigfoot back then in 1958 in eastern Kentucky. You didn't hear about it, or a Sasquatch or anything like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. They called it wild man. That's a part that's fascinating.
Right, the wild man, yeah.
Yeah, you find that in areas in the South, especially in the South. They don't really have a name for it. If you look up old accounts, they'll call it the corn man, they'll call it the wild man, they have all these different names for it. No heads is another one. But they have all these different names for it. But it's interesting because they didn't know what Sasquatch was back then. This is 10 years before the Patterson-Gimlin film. So they have really no clue what they're looking at. That's fascinating.
Yes. And like she said, you didn't have media back then. You didn't have the internet to look this stuff up. They didn't have it in newspapers there, or you didn't know to look for it. It was just you heard, like the store owner said, that's some kind of wild man. Yeah, it always fascinated me that, and like I said, I told you in email, nobody thought to go look for tracks. Nobody thought you didn't think about things back then, she said. You didn't think about going to look at the footprints or making a cast or anything like that. That wasn't heard of. But it's just, I had her retell me the tale the other night after I contacted you. Same story over again, with all the details. I always enjoy hearing her tell the story.
Oh yeah, I can.
And I hope you've enjoyed it too. I wanted to share that with you. So
Oh, I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. I love hearing encounters prior to the Patterson Gimlin film coming out. I think they're fascinating. Let me ask you, did you ever ask your mom, was there anything else that went on and around the property that she kind of raised an eyebrow on?
I have asked her that before, and she said nothing ever came to mind except for those incidents there. And then everything just stopped one day as far as no more getting into the chicken coop. The doors were locked, so there was no more access to the house. Nothing like that she knew of anybody saying anything else, or anybody around town ever said anything else about it. And like she said, it was her family, and the store owner were really the only ones that knew the tale. They didn't go around spreading the story or saying anything about it. She said it actually scared her so much that when she was younger, they didn't really want to talk about it anymore, especially my aunt. My aunt didn't want it mentioned in her presence. It shook her up that bad.
I can imagine.
And I could even remember like family reunions when I was a teenager, when I would bring it up, and my aunt would cover her ears and go, I don't want to hear it. Don't tell that around me. I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to remember that. I always thought that was kind of funny. Well, not funny in the sense that it scared you that bad that you don't want to hear about it again. Because I could listen to it again today if she told me. I just love the tale. So
there's a real PTSD that goes on with these when people see these things that isn't supposed to exist. And that's what makes me really believe your mom and your aunt and the store owner, they had that almost like PTSD afterwards. It's like, I don't even want to hear about this tale anymore. I don't even want to address this anymore.
Yeah, after I talked to you, my objective was to get her to tell you the tale. But she didn't want to. I wanted her to tell it to you in her way. And she said, no, you tell it. She says, you've heard it enough to remember it, so you tell it. And I would have loved to have her tell you, because I've always asked her, why didn't anybody tell anyone the story? She goes, well, it just wasn't something that you saw it. That was pretty much the end of it, I said, well, you'd think back then people would you always see the old stories, well, we're going to get together a posse and go looking for this wild man. But she said it wasn't that kind of, that would have been my first thought. Hey, I want to go look and see where this thing walked. But she said back then people just, after it walked away, it was gone, you leave it alone. So.
Yeah, it makes me think of an encounter. I just talked to a guy from Oklahoma, and he was talking about his mother, almost kind of identical to your encounter. They thought the creature was coming in the house and getting food because food would come up missing. And the reason why they thought it was a creature, the part that's fascinating, there was a 18-inch track in the middle of their kitchen floor. It was a muddy, human-like footprint.
Oh, wow.
Floor, but they had noticed that food was coming up missing, and they didn't lock their doors. I think this happened back in the 60s. They didn't lock their doors or anything, and there's this human-like muddy foot track right in the middle of their kitchen. They knew at that point it was coming in. And the other fascinating part is they called it the wild man, too. It was his grandmother that was telling him the story, and she said the wild man would come in and take food from their home. And it's just odd, because nowadays we have a whole different mentality. If I found a muddy footprint in my kitchen floor, you can best guarantee someone's going to eat a bullet the next time they come in the house.
Right.
But back then it was like they just kind of didn't really know what they were dealing with and just kind of brushed it off. It fascinates me.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. It's just like I was telling you, it was a different time. People didn't lock their doors until something like that happened, and then I guess like they figured lock the door, problem solved. Yeah. No need to go any further with it. So you and I would want to see what's coming in the house. I'm going to wait for it, but.
Is that what kind of fascinated you about this topic? Is your own mother having
that story?
Yeah.
Yes, after seeing that movie, and then when you're a kid, you think, oh, wow, look at this. These guys are out hunting for Bigfoot or whatever. It's a Sasquatch. And then she, right after the movie, tell you a tale such as this. And you're like, man, there's an experience right here close to my own family. I didn't have to get on horses to go find that. You know what I mean? Like, after you see the movie, you're like, I didn't have to go on an expedition. I got a story right here that's really awesome that I have, and I can keep for the rest of my life, this tale. And, yeah, that's pretty much got me into being an amateur as far as looking up stuff and studying it and reading reports and things like that. You got to watch what you read, though. So that's where I've learned that too.
Well, we're all amateurs at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. But then you can actually tell after a while what's credible and what isn't.
Well, I sure appreciate you coming on and sharing it. Like I said, I loved reading it. I thought it was fascinating, and it's interesting too. People from Kentucky. I wish I could get more people from Kentucky to come on, because I think there's more going on in that general location, that general region, than what we hear about. People down in the South, for some reason, they're kind of hush-hush about this. And generally, those are the people that have the best stories.
Yeah, and I think that shows you sometimes that is a lot of those stories are credible, because they don't tell anybody and they kind of figure what's to be gained from lying about something, or what's to be gained from even telling anybody the story. So they keep it. It's like a family knit story. You know what I mean? It doesn't get out. So that's what usually leads credence to that. It's actually a good, true story.
Well, Greg, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. And keep up the good work with the show. I enjoy listening to I listen a lot on YouTube, so I will continue. I'm trying to get caught up on all of them.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
I want to welcome Robin to the show. Robin, thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
And if you would just kind of start from the beginning. I know your dad's going to be coming on shortly to talk about his encounters, but you had a really recent experience with one of these creatures. If you would kind of start from the beginning, tell us what you were out doing and tell us what you saw, what you experienced.
Okay. We live in southern Missouri. One of my daughter's friends has been friends with her for several years. She's 27, and she was riding with me, and we were leaving my parents' house and heading back into the town that I lived in, and at the time. And we got about 4 miles out from where my parents live, and we were going down the highway, and at the time I drove a 1999 Grand Marquis, and the lights pretty well covered the road. We come upon something standing on the side of the road down in the ditch. I kind of saw it before the lights hit it, and then once the lights hit it, I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? And my daughter's friend, she's like, I don't know, but it's huge. I'm like, oh my, what is that, Tina? And she's like, I don't know. It's huge though. You know, we got a good view of it. Its back was facing towards the road, and it looked like it was looking down into the ditch that it was standing in. You could just barely see the neck, but we saw the shoulders, which were a good 4 feet or so across. And we saw the right arm, and it was about as big as a good-sized man's thigh. And the color of it was like the skin was like charcoal gray. The hair was like pretty scarce, like it had mange. I know I've heard that before, but I mean, that's really what it looked like, a bad case of it. And the hair was like a tannish auburn color, sparsely on it. And we could see the waist real clearly. I'd say it was probably about 3 feet wide, and it went from the waist up to its shoulders, and it like a V shape. It was just huge. And when we drove by, we thought it was squatting, but we didn't know how deep the ditch was. When we got past it, I said, should we stop? And she's like, no, I'm going to pee myself. And then I said, should we turn around? And she's like, no, really, I'm not joking. So I noticed the mile marker, and I told her to call my dad, and we let him know. And a little later, we conference called with my brother, and he told us to go back the next day and look for evidence. So while I was at work on Monday, Tina left to go back to northern Missouri where she lives, and my dad went out at the mile marker that we had told him, but I thought I had told him it would be a bit north of that, but I must have not in the excitement. We were pretty excited and nervous and a lot of emotions going on. And
I can imagine.
Yeah. And so he texted me at work and told me to call him on my break. So I called him and he said, "I'm not finding anything. Are you sure it was that?" And I said, "Well, Dad, it's a little north of that." And so he said, "Well, your mom and I will pick you up after work and we'll go look." And so we end up driving by and I said, "Right there." And he goes, "Well," he said, "that's further north than what and I said, "Well, we were talking and carrying on." I said, "We missed the mile markers." And so we went back and we went down into the ditch. We were looking around and there was torn up trash and stuff down in there. We found a few footprints in the mud. And I sent you pictures of the one that was had the definition of the toes and the heel marking, and we measured it at 18 inches long and 8 inches across. And then there was a few others where you could see where the rocks were smashed down into the mud, but really there was no definition to them. You just see the size of what had stepped on that.
When you went down into the ditch, how far down was it? I mean, what was your estimation on how tall this thing was?
Well, my dad had me go up to where we first caught sight of it by this road sign, and then he took the tape measure, raised it up until I figured, where it would have been at, and we measured about 8 feet.
As you went by the creature, did it make any movements towards you, or did it look your way, or or was it just focused on whatever was below?
It was just focused on whatever it was looking at. It didn't even move. I mean, it was almost like when the lights hit it, like it went as still as a tree. I mean, it was just like, it was almost like a purpose, because before the lights hit it, I thought I had caught movement. And then I was like, "What's that?" And then the lights hit it, and it was like it was just still. And, and we went by, and so I think it, with the trash that we saw there, I think it was rummaging maybe for food or something in that, because it looked like fast food sacks that were down in that ditch.
Yeah, that's interesting. What did your daughter's friend say? What did she think it was?
She, after she settled down, she was like, "Oh my gosh, I have finally seen a Bigfoot." She said that her dad had told her a story of him seeing one when he was younger, when he worked for a farmer. So she was pretty excited that she had probably seen one as well, and she couldn't wait to tell him. I mean, it was just a huge creature, and it was not a bear. Was not a bear.
Yeah, and I don't think bears even get to be that size out there in Missouri, do they?
No.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they don't.
No, I don't think so.
That would have been, the size of 4 feet across in the shoulders, which is what a lot of witnesses report. You're talking a little bit bigger than a grizzly bear. And animals don't just stand still, and, for the most part, predators will move out of the way, especially if a car is coming or... so that's interesting, too, that it didn't move. It chose to kind of stand still. Kind of reminds me of an encounter or a person that recorded one going down the road. And the moment the lights hit this thing, you can kind of, like how you described it, Robin, you can kind of see this thing moving. The moment the lights hit it, it just freezes. It plays like freeze tag. Yeah, that's what this seemed like. And there was like 2 cars behind us. We could see the lights. It was around 9:30 at night, so it was dark. And I told Tina, I said, "Wouldn't that be something if we could talk to those people and see, what they say, they saw?" Because I know they had to see it, because, they weren't that far behind us. So, unless after our lights, went off of it,
went up the ridge, but I don't know. I would think they would have caught it moving up the ridge.
Yeah, what was going through your mind when you saw it? I mean, this is the first time you've ever seen something like this. Obviously, you probably heard stories. I know your dad had encounters, but what did you think actually seeing it?
I kind of laughed, and I told Tina, I said that was so scary. I said, I have always said that if I saw one, I would want to see it from my car. I said, bucket list checked off.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. And I think that's how a lot of people would rather see them in their car. Passing it,
yeah. You know. But as we were, we found the footprints. I have an injured foot, so I went back up on the gravel shoulder of the highway, and my dad decided to go up on the ridge. And he went to the north side, climbed up there, and then he walked across. And as he was walking across, I noticed a tree bend and two trees made into an X. And they were really tall trees. I mean, where I was standing, you could just really see them. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'm going to take pictures of that. So my dad walked by. I was waiting for him to go by. He walked by, and then he went back down the slope to where my mom was. She was looking at some broken deer antlers she'd found that were, she said, pretty well cleaned, and so they were looking at that. So I started taking pictures of these trees and didn't think anything of it, took pictures of that, and then my dad was doing the measuring, and when I took pictures of him doing that, as I was taking pictures of him doing that, I heard rock clacking to my right up on the ridge. And I turned to look that direction. I didn't see anything. I took some pictures, and I didn't see anything in those pictures. But when I looked back at the pictures that I was taking of my dad doing the tape measure, measuring where we could get size and things, it looked like beside a tree above his head up on the ridge, it looked like there was a face there. And then after the rock clacking, the face was gone. Later that night, my dad called me up and said that the picture of the tree bend and the X that I had taken, there was something in the picture. And I was like, what? And I couldn't see what he was talking about. So he came into my house and showed me, and I sent that picture to you, and it looks like there is a creature in front of a tree, squatted down and looking right at me while I'm taking the pictures of those the tree bend and the X. And I didn't even notice it when I was taking the pictures.
That's interesting. Do you mind if I post those pictures under this episode?
That'd be fine.
Yeah, and that's, it's creepy. Have you guys gone back to that spot to see if the figure is still there?
Well, the pictures that I had taken, my daughter and son-in-law stopped there, and I took some pictures. They walked up there, and I took pictures, and there was nothing there.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah. And, we drive by it every day. I'm always looking up there to see if I can catch a glimpse of something.
Yeah.
But
I don't blame you. I mean, it's an interesting encounter, especially your brother's right. It's really cool that you guys went back. Very few people ever go back because generally they don't want to. That's cool of your brother to say, hey, go back and try and find evidence of the encounter.
Well, I have to tell you, when Dad called me and said, I'm going to pick you up before we can go there, my stomach just started flip-flopping. I was really nervous. I was like, now it's during the day and it's going to be okay. But I was still very nervous.
I don't blame you. And I think that's why most people don't go back to where they had their encounter, because they don't want to. They're afraid they'll run into it again, and that's a huge creature, 4 feet across, and you said about 8 feet tall. That's a big boy. It's definitely a big boy. I think it's interesting you mentioned the gray skin. A lot of witnesses I've had on lately talk about the gray skin, seeing almost like leather type of skin, but it's gray.
Yeah, it was really strange. I always you know, I mean, I've heard people say that on different podcasts that I listen to because I'm interested in the subject, but I just figured the more likely you would see something more covered in fur. So that surprised me seeing that. And then the one that I took the picture of is actually all covered in a brown fur.
I'm really glad that you were in your car at the time and there was no danger. You were just passing it. I think that's the encounter we all wish for, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And when I was asking, should we stop? Should we turn around? I myself was thinking, no. And I was probably pretty glad that she said no. But it still, you know, it was the surprise and it was scary and just, I don't know, it was just a whirlwind. I'm glad I saw one, because now when I say I believe in them, I know that there is something that I am believing in.
Definitely seeing is believing. Robin, I appreciate you coming on and sharing the encounter very much. It's a cool encounter. Like I said, it's the encounter all of us want. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you. And I really enjoy your show, and I appreciate what the information you get out there for people. I think it's important. The other day I was listening to your show and you said something about retirement. I almost went into a panic, and then you said it was the poker game, and I was like, oh, that was mean. So I'm glad it wasn't from the podcast. I'm glad to hear that that's still going.
Yeah, no, thank you, and I appreciate you listening. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. You have a good evening, okay? And I'll let you speak to my father. Hello.
Bob, thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome.
And if you would, you had 2 encounters. Would you mind starting with the very first one when you were younger and a young man and with your friend, as you and I were talking right before we went on air? Kind of tell us what you were doing and what you ran into.
This is a long time ago, and matter of fact, it was 54 to 56 years ago. My younger brother and I were camping out on a river on our dad's farm. We camped out all the time. It was late. It was probably 1 or 2 in the morning, and we was down by the river and had a fire going. We had 2 dogs with us. These were literally junkyard dogs. One weighed about 120 pounds, and the other weighed 149 pounds. They was half boxer, half German Shepherd. They were brothers. Anyway, we was getting ready to lay down, go to bed, and we had been down on the river for probably 3 days camping out. And we'd just go back to the house, do our chores and everything we had to do. Then we'd go back to our campsite. And the only thing we had with us was a paring knife, cut up the potatoes. But anyway, that night we was getting ready to get in our blankets, go to bed. A big rock about the size, probably twice the size of a softball, hit in our campsite and rode right up to the fire. The interesting thing about this was there's no rocks like that in that area. So we jumped up. The dogs started growling real low and came up next to me and my younger brother and wouldn't leave our side, no matter what. We even tried to sick them on whoever or whatever was over there, and they would not do that. Normally they were more than willing.
What did you think it was?
We had no idea. We had, at that time, we thought at that time that it was somebody that saw our campfire, had been walking down the river, and decided to harass us. we decided we didn't even have flashlights back them days. I mean, we didn't. We was pretty poor. So we decided to go to the house. So we started walking north, and on the left was bean field. On the right was like a 20-foot fence row that was full of brush. And we would walk. We was almost stumbling over the dogs. They were so close to us. You've got to remember, these dogs have run people out of the old salvage yard that my dad owned. They wouldn't your lap dogs.
Yeah, these aren't the dogs you want to mess around with.
No, they was very good dogs. But we could hear whatever it was walking on the other side of the brush in our neighbor's field. We would stop, it would stop. And we'd stop, and it'd take like a step. We could hear like a step, and then it would stop. It did that all the way to the old abandoned railroad track that we had to cross, which was total brush, and it was like a tunnel, and we knew we had to get across that. Well, we got to that, and let's say that we kind of hurried to get through that overgrown tunnel area, across the tracks. Then we had bean fields and pasture on our right side, and with a fence row that was about 20 foot thick on our left, still going north. Well, then we hadn't gone probably 30 yards. Then we could hear it on our left, on the other side of the brush. Well, we got up to the last field that we had to cross to see, to get to the house. And Dad always left our old yard light on, which was nothing more than like a 150-watt bulb. So I told Terry, I says, if whatever is over there is going to get us, I says, it's going to get us before we get to the light. And I says, we started cutting across the field towards the house. And I told him, I said, run. Well, he took off running. I let him get ahead probably 20, 30 yards. And I was looking back at the brush. Of course, the old yard light was behind me, and I could see the outline of the brush, and nothing come through the brush. So I spun around and took off running. The dogs were with Terry, and probably needless to say, I caught him pretty quick. And we busted in the house. Dad come running in the kitchen asking us what was going on. And we said, somebody run us out of the bottom. And we told him what happened. And he says, that was probably some big cat, because we had heard panthers in the past. And that's all he said. But, I didn't really pay much attention to these Bigfoot sightings and everything until about maybe 10 years ago. And my younger brother and I, we were talking. He doesn't believe. He's just one of them guys that one would have to swat him upside the head before he'd believe it. And I was telling him, I says, all them years when we was down there when we camped on the river, I said, in all these years, Dad told us it was a panther. He goes, yeah. I says, when have you ever seen a panther throw a round rock that's twice the size of a softball? I said, it wasn't a panther. And I said, that rock had to come from a long ways off. The very next night, we was camping out on the river again, but we couldn't, to this day, I cannot remember if that rock was there or not. I just can't remember.
Yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, there's really only, if you don't believe in Bigfoot, then the only thing that can throw rocks is humans. As well as I do, you don't throw rocks into someone's camp. That's a great way to get shot. You know, there's just nothing else that throws rocks. I can't imagine some guy out there just tossing. Panthers don't throw rocks. You and I both know that. And if it was a panther, it would have ran you both down. It would have had you guys. It's not going to walk out with you.
I think that those two dogs, as vicious as they was, I think they would have took on a cat.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I really do. You know, especially protecting us. Interesting enough, that was just one of the very few times that Terry and I, my younger brother, didn't carry our 22 single shots with us.
Yeah.
It was just unusual.
Yeah, dogs that size, especially what you're talking about, and that breed too, they're going to run down a cat. That's what I always worry about with my pit bull. If I come across a cougar, even though he's a sweet dog, I think he'd run down a cougar in a heartbeat and probably not even think twice about it.
Well, these dogs had run down people before that were trespassing. So, and run them off. So I don't think these two guys would have had any problems with the cat. I just don't, especially trying to protect us.
I would agree with you on that, Bob. And you had an encounter a couple of years back, didn't you? Just a couple of years ago, you had another encounter?
Yeah, I was driving for a trucking company. They had us get off the interstate to do this shortcut, and was going through some small towns. This was southwest of Cleveland, Ohio. I was driving late at night. It was probably between 2 and 4 in the morning. And they had just repaired the road, resurfaced it, and the only thing in the road was reflectors down the center. No side lines on the side at all. Was going through, had just left a small town, and I'm driving on this road, and I was only doing like 45 mile an hour because it was one of those moonless, just one of the moonless dark nights. So I'm moving along there and went through a group of trees, had my lights on brights, but I put them back on dims because I could see the pavement better,
right.
The edge of the pavement better. We go through this group of trees. There's a field on the right. I noticed open space on the left, and then I seen a farmhouse and a barn, and it was on the left. No lights, no security lights, nothing. The place was pitch black. And I noticed that, got my eyes back on the road, and then all of a sudden I seen, because I'm always looking for deer, cows, whatever on the highway, people. So I'm always watching. And all of a sudden I seen something coming from the left, and it was just out of the headlights, and it was moving tremendously fast, and it cut just across the right corner of the headlights, across the pavement, and it was like it was angled towards the truck, and it stopped. And I was looking for eye shine or something, but all I could make out was I couldn't make out its legs, arms, or whatever. But all I could see was the bulk of the body. And I would say it was from 3.5 to 4 foot wide, and probably that or better up and down. And it had a kind of grayish, reddish color to it. And it looked real, the hair wasn't like fur. It was long and straggly. And it looked, I thought, mangy, is what I thought. But no eye shine.
Was it on all fours, Bob? Or was it up on 2 legs?
It was on 2 legs, whatever it was. And I was expecting a horse because how fast it was moving. I used to hunt deer all the time. I've even shot and wounded one that moved so quick. This was as quick as or quicker than that. how it got across that road. I let off the fuel. As soon as I seen it on the left, I let off the fuel because I was going to hit the brakes. But when it cleared the road, I didn't hit the brakes. I was just kind of coasting. And then when I was watching it, no eye shine or nothing, and then it went past the right window. Well, it passed out of view, out of the right windshield and right window. I thought, well, was that? And I almost applied my brakes. Then I go, wait a minute. If it could move from the shoulder of that road from the left to the right and then stop that quick, I decided to downshift and just go on my way.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I said, I could stop and it could be at the cab of that truck in a split second. So I just kept moving.
So you see it, you're going down the highway, and is it running down the side of the highway and then crosses the highway? Is that what happened?
It seemed to me like it came between the barn and the house, out of that yard, across the yard, across the ditch, because that was the angle it was moving. It's like the angle between the house and the barn, and it cut across in front of me at an angle.
Oh, I gotcha.
And which that alone really surprised me. Normally, it's other animals that I've encountered have always crossed perpendicular to the road, and then they don't stop.
Yeah, and then they don't stop and you run into them. That's really interesting. And so it's up on two legs. It's running. I would imagine person went out of the window, out of your mind really quick on seeing this thing, how quickly it's moving.
I would say to cross that highway from shoulder to shoulder, it may have taken 2 steps on the pavement. It may have. I mean, this thing, it was just like it was at it happened so quick, I didn't even have time to hit my brakes. That's how quick it got across the road. I had hit them after it got across the road. That's when I hit my bright light. And I think that's the only reason I picked it up, standing there with, I'm presuming, with its back to me. But it was still right at the edge of the lights. All I could make out was its bulk, and that was it. And I'd say the bulk was probably 3.5 feet or more off the ground, because that field on that side of the road was low. It was like probably 3 feet lower than the highway.
What did you think it was at the time?
At first, I thought it was to move as quick as it was. At first, I thought it was a horse. That's the only thing that I could relate to that was that big. But then, when it stopped, and I couldn't see eye shine or nothing, and it stopped as quick as it stopped, I seen the bulk go by the windshield. I made out kind of the reddish and the gray and the straggly long hair. It was probably behind the truck. I had a 53-foot trailer on, and it was probably then, well, it was after I decided not to stop. I said, I think I just encountered a Bigfoot, and realized I'm glad I didn't stop.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. What did you think when Robin told you her encounter about seeing the one on the side of the road?
Well, after that, I started paying more attention to things. I've hunted all my life, or just been out in the woods, and I believed her when when Tina called, and those girls was not only you could hear how scared the voices was, but how excited they was. Not excited as in a good excited, but just
Right, just amped up.
Yeah, they was. I told her that she needed to go on home and not go back. And the next day, we found Robin actually was the one that found the tracks. I started doing the measurements on height and width. Just they were just estimates. But when she actually found the tracks, where it was like 8-9 inches wide, 18 inches long, and little pieces of dry grass in the track had actually popped back up like out of the wet mud, and it still had wet mud on these little pieces of dry grass. Then it stepped a couple other tracks. It actually stepped, and it looked like it in a place where there was no grass, and it pretty obvious that it had disturbed the rocks and all there by pushing them down. And so after that, I decided to go up on what she called the ridge and see if I could see where it had come up off the road, up the embankment. And so I had walked from north to south on that ridge. And we had taken pictures already of all the footprints and everything. She took the pictures of those trees, and which I didn't even know she was doing. I was up there kind of tracking, looking for stuff that might be disturbed, because that ridge, it just drops off pretty dramatically west of the highway. So I was walking down the right-of-way up there, looking down through there and snapping some pictures with my phone. Didn't see nothing. I looked at the pictures, never seen nothing. And then when I get back down there, we kind of wrapped it up, and she actually had taken 4 or 5 pictures of that ridge. So we kind of wrapped it up and went back to the house. Then later on that night, I had her email me those pictures, and I put it on the computer. That's when I called her and said, hey, there was something up there looking back at you when you were taking a photograph. So I had actually went back there 2 more times and walked the ridge, and I haven't seen or heard anything. And she heard rock clacking after she took some pictures. She asked me if I'd heard them up there, and I said, no, I didn't hear them. 65 is a pretty busy road, kind of noisy.
Yeah. Well, be careful when you guys go out and you're searching, especially in an area like that. The thing that worries me about these creatures when they're on the side of the road like that, a normal wild animal will kind of flee. Well, I don't want to say flee. You got your dumb deer. They'll cross in front of you and you could hit one. But predators, for the most part, don't cross roads the way these things cross roads. Being a truck driver like you were, how many cougars did you see to cross a road as you're driving up on it?
I've never seen one cougar.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's most predators, you just won't see this type of behavior. It's almost kind of arrogance or cockiness of these things to just kind of care less who's driving by. And that's the weird part is whenever people have encounters like your daughter had an encounter, that's kind of what their reaction is. These creatures, they just kind of stand there, wait until you're almost up to them, then they'll cross the road or they'll stand there. And it's such an odd, strange behavior. When did you start looking into this, Bob? When did you start taking an interest in Bigfoot?
Well, it's really funny. I grew up on a farm, hunting all my life. I've hunted the swamps, forests in Virginia, Florida, all these different states. Never, ever have I encountered anything. If you do still hunting like I used to do, there's every once in a while you feel like, maybe I'm not here in the woods by myself. Never, ever did I think that there could be a possible creature like that. Cougars, panthers, whatever you want to call them, black bears. Yeah, sure, that's part of it. But I didn't really start paying attention to this until probably 7-9 years ago, something like that. And I haven't really hunted in probably 15, 16 years. Actually got out and did any hunting. But the problem with people are we're so arrogant that we think we're at the top of the food chain, and that may not be so.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not so. It's definitely not so with these things. Bob, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and thanks to Robin for coming on the show. Really appreciate you two sharing your encounters. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
You're welcome, and we appreciate the work you do. Thanks,
Bob. And again, with a heavy heart, I do the show. I'm not sure what else to say. Let's just ask God to take care of the fallen law enforcement and watch over the ones who protect us. Remember, they're the ones running towards the bullets as the rest of us run away from the bullets. Have a good night, everyone. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. This is a property that I've been investigating. It's two brothers. And to describe it to the audience, it's an interesting place. They have neighbors, but it's a very, very rural portion of the country. And the guys asked me not to really mention too much of where it's at. So tonight I won't be mentioning where it's at, but it's a very interesting situation. They live down this little rural street, and they do have neighbors, and each property has about 5 acres, anywhere between an acre and 5 acres. And so it's kind of nice. Mick lives down the street from his brother Matt. They're on the edge of a national forest, and it's just there's a creek, there's a river system that's running through this place. As you listen tonight, keep in mind that Mick and Matt, these guys aren't researchers. These guys aren't investigators. Originally, they had contacted me asking me for help. How do we make these creatures go away? We're not looking for fame. We're not just, can you tell us how to make these things go away? And the other thing I'll mention to the audience, it was very, very tough to get these guys to come on the show. I've been talking with these guys for about a month and a half, and it's been very, very tough to get them to come on the show and share what they've seen, what they've experienced. So keep that in mind as you listen tonight. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com, and I'm getting ready to take off for Beachfoot. So any of you that are heading to, or most likely at Beachfoot now, I will see you guys there shortly. But let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Mick and Matt to the show. Guys, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
You guys got a situation going on there around your guys' home. I know we spent a couple hours talking to Jim Lansdale last night. But Matt, for the audience, maybe I'll start with you since you had the very first encounter. Would you kind of start from the beginning? I know you were tearing a bush out of Mick's yard, but just kind of start from the beginning for the audience, just like we were talking last night.
Well, Mick and I were cleaning out a bush. It was been here about 30 years, starting to overhang over the driveway. A buddy of ours stopped by, wanted us to go golfing, and so we left to go golfing, but we told his wife we'd have the bush out before we went to bed that night. So we go golfing, come home, been a long day. Mick decided he was going to go to bed. So I didn't tell him I was going to tear off the bush. And I waited a little while, went over there, because I knew he'd stay up if he knew I was up. So I was over there late. No one knew I was over there. It was dark. I opened his garage door with his truck. You know, the garage door opener in his truck. Ran an extension cord out, so all I had was a light. What do you call it?
Halogen light.
Yeah, like a halogen light. So shining it out there. I had some snips handsaw, because I don't wake anybody up with a chainsaw, and was cutting this bush out. I just basically made my way into the trunk area and then was cutting it up, and then kind of tearing it off and pulling it out behind me. And then, when I get a big pile, I'd get out, pull them the rest of the way out. Well, I'd been there probably 15, 20 minutes, and I heard a loud, almost like half of an owl's call, but it was really loud. It didn't have the hollow sound that an owl's call has. It was more like like the who without the second. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was really loud, and I had my radio going, talk radio, on a little, like a Bluetooth radio, so it wasn't loud, but it was, it was loud enough to catch my attention. The radio wasn't loud, is what I'm saying. So I thought, that's kind of weird. I thought maybe somebody was jacking around out there. Didn't think much about it. 3 or 4 minutes later, same thing. Loud, who, I don't want to do it, but, it's really loud, like someone was standing at the end of the drive, kind of yelling at you. Another 3 or 4 minutes had passed. That same noise happened. And it's like, I'd never heard it before. It was like an owl's call. But an owl's call is it's got that hollow to it, and it kind of goes on. It's like, and this was just like something was yelling at me, basically. Thought it was someone, obviously, at the time. And I thought, it's dark. We don't have street lamps around, or, it's basically however lit you want your house is about how much light there is out there. So it's a pretty dark neighborhood surrounded by woods.
It's a neighborhood in the middle of woods. It's real, there's trees everywhere.
And Matt, the owl call that you heard, what made you think it might have been a person? Was there something about it that made you think, well, that's not an owl?
Yeah, because it was, I don't know how to explain it other than like an owl has kind of that hollow sound to it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's everybody's heard of owl, so that it has like this hollow sound, it carries. But this was more like forced, like somebody was, hollering at me. At first I'm thinking, what the world, like, my brother's got 2 teenage boys. I don't rule it out, I'm thinking, somebody's jacking with me here. So I get out, climb out from that big bush. I'm standing there, looking around. It's dark. I don't see anybody. So I, basically took a little bit of a break and climbed back in there. I went in there 3 or 4 minutes. And the first 2 calls had come from, 2 really distinctly different areas. This is enough, this wasn't like, kind of like, I think I heard something. This was like, it was loud. In this dark neighborhood, everybody's, the neighborhood's shut down, it's bedtime. So the third time it happened, it was really loud. And it came really, from like 20 or 40 yards, 30, 40 yards down further. But they all sound a little different, like same call, a little different. So that's when I got out and I thought, okay, I know something's not right here. So I texted Nick, to be honest with you. I thought, let's wake him up and get him out here. You know what I mean? I thought, I'm trying to get this across here, let you know that it's obviously a foreign sound. It's loud. If it was a person, they had been standing at the end of the driveway bellowing at me. But at this point, I'm not thinking anything other than there's got to be somebody around this house. So I go back to it. I'm tearing these branches out, pulling them out. It'd been, 10 or 15 minutes. I hear 2 distinct slaps. Well, let me take that back. First, I heard a scream, like a very loud scream. That was, at that point, something was obviously wrong. It was like, it kind of shook me. Like if it was like I said yesterday, I've heard lines, I've been to Africa. It was like that. Something very deep and loud. Now I'm thinking, I don't know what in the world is going on, you know. But I'm inside this bush, and, you know, from the outside of the bush, you couldn't see I was there. You might be able to hear me or something, but you couldn't see me. Other than that light that's there and the little talk radio going on. When that happens, you know, stop traffic, right? I'm like, trying not to much on panic or nothing, but it was definitely loud enough to where I'm wondering, A, why is everyone else not waking up? And B, what in the world is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as I'm kind of sitting there, I'm just sitting there kind of almost Indian style under this tree, you know, under this shrub up against basically the trunk of it. And I go back to sawing slowly, and I hear two distinct, like, slaps, you know, like if you used to bend down and slap your hand on the pavement, you know. I thought, what in the world? And shortly after that, I hear like another scream, not like the first one, but it was like something had worked itself up. You know, I didn't recognize it, whatever it was. But all of a sudden, I heard like footfall on pavement, like if someone was running on barefoot on pavement. Sounded like it was coming from, you know, pretty good distance down, like 150, 200 yards down. It's like it was faint. You know, I could hear the footfalls, and I thought, and it was louder, faster. And, you know how time slows down kind of
when you're in a high stress situation.
Yeah, I'm sitting there like, I'm trying to register all this and thinking, what in the world am I hearing? And it was like all of a sudden something, you know, it was almost like something yanked me up and said, go. So I just shot out of that bush. I just spun around, you know, on 6 knee surgeries. I don't run, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I ran that night. So there's a real incline to his driveway. And I just turned out there, did not look. I remember thinking, do not look. Because I could tell by the speed of the footfall that whatever it was, I didn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't going to do nothing to slow myself down. I sure wasn't going to look at it.
What did you think it was at this point?
I don't know. You know, to be fair, I'm picturing, I don't know. I pictured something big and loud and fast was chasing me, and that's why I didn't want to look at it, because I had no idea. I don't know. I just knew that it wasn't anything I could really register. So I ran fast as I could up that driveway. It's probably, I can't read, 20, 30 feet. I get to the bed of his truck, which leaves me another, 12, 14 feet to the garage door. And I can hear it coming up the drive. I can hear it breathing. I can hear its feet, everything. And I'm thinking I'm about to scream because no one knows I'm out there. It's dark. I'm sitting here, kind of thinking, my mind's blown right now. You know what I'm saying? Right when I get a couple steps from the garage door, I got to scream. I'm going to die out here. No one's ever going to know. But I didn't. I didn't scream. I just kept running, made it to the garage door. I ran through his garage door, and it kind of slammed it behind me as I ran through it. And then I spun around in his kitchen, and I'm kind of looking at the door. Then I realized I'm standing in his kitchen where him, his wife and 3 kids are sleeping. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? I'm in his house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of stand there for a minute, and then I open that door again to look out the garage. I crack it, and I see something big and very black cut from one side, the left side of the garage door, to the right, in front of my Jeep and behind his truck. And that's when I was like, okay. So I hollered at his son, who's, he's got the first bedroom there, and he came out, and I said, hey, could you get your dad for me and have him grab a gun? And I'm thinking, what in the world am I going to say to him when he comes out here that's not going to make me look like an insane person?
So when you came down there, Mick, what happened?
My brother is usually calm and cool and collective. He don't get worked up, and I could tell that something had happened because he was very, he was worked up. He was yelling at me to grab a gun. I was like, for what? He said, just grab a gun. So I grabbed the gun, we come out, and I could tell, I could tell that he was frightened, like something had startled him to the point where I hadn't seen. Like we grew up together, we lived out in the country, farm, and we were adventurous. We go hiking, do all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, like, we've seen stuff, but I'd never seen him to where he was like, he was wanting a gun, he was worked up.
What did you think he was running from? I mean, when he told you what happened, what was going through your mind?
Well, we went outside, and we looked around, and there was footprints from the garage door to the door. And the only thing at that point, we tried to talk ourselves out of it, but there was footsteps. Like he was telling you yesterday, I have squirrel feeders and bird feeders out in my front yard on the trees, and there's a big footprint. I have a big tree around where I had just moved in here in October of last year, and there's dirt around the tree, like packed down dirt, and there's a huge footprint I have mulch around my front cement patio, and there's like an imprint in that, and then there's another imprint right by the dirt. The dirt sticks out probably 5 feet around the tree, where somebody had mulch there or something, rocks, whatever, but it's cleared out now. And there's a footprint there, but there's footprints, because I had a oil at the entrance of the garage. There's a little oil spot, and it had stepped in that oil, and it was a footprint, but it was huge. And there's footprints all the way to the door of my house. It had went inside my garage all the way to the door. And at this point, I've heard about Bigfoot and all that. So that's what there was no, really, that was the only explanation. I mean, from what he was saying, and we didn't want to admit that, but at that point, there's no other, what else could it be? Like, there's not anybody that big that moves that fast.
Were the footprints like human-like tracks that you were seeing?
Yeah, they're big footprints, bigger than, like, when he put his foot next to it, it was, wasn't even close. And then I was thinking, like, remember I saw that, black thing go from left to right, and I thought, it kind of looked big, but not,
How big would you estimate the footprints?
I don't know. I would say
I wear a size 11, and it was probably almost 2 of my feet.
Huge.
Yeah. And that much wide, too. Like, it was like all around twice my foot.
And can you talk a little bit about the fluid you found, too, as well?
Oh, yeah. Like he said, it had stepped through some oil or something, but what we saw, we still don't know what it is, but it was almost like, the footprints went all the way into the garage to the doormat. You could see exactly what it did. Stopped the doormat, and it turned around, and he had in front of the left bay of his garage was a refrigerator that he was getting ready to have hauled away. And it had turned around, ran behind it. You could see where it was crouched there. And then it turned around and went out the garage door. And then from the left side, of the garage door, went over to the right, back to where it came from, basically. But there was, looked like, urine or something, like it was peeing as it ran.
Yeah, it looked like it peed while it was running. There's like a line of,
it was like zigzag lines, like it was going everywhere.
Yeah, and I thought that part was interesting. As Jim and I were talking last night, Jim Lansdale, he was saying that's not uncommon for them to do that. That's not uncommon for them to get excited in the middle of a chase and actually pee. And I thought that was fascinating. I don't know that I've heard a witness say that before.
Yeah. Well, we're, like I said, we're kind of standing here, like, looking at each other like, you gotta be kidding me right now. And he's like, something, it was probably worked up in here. Like I said, I was in that bush. He said you might have scared the piss out of it when he came out of it. if it thought it was anyone there. I don't know. I mean, at this point, I'm sitting here thinking I have no idea, and I can't really rule anything out because I'm seeing something I'm not sure. It's not like I'd never heard of Bigfoot or nothing, but I thought to myself, I wouldn't call somebody a liar, but I figured it'd be up in mountains or something.
At the time when we were looking at the footsteps and everything, we were thinking that it got so worked up that I didn't realize what it was doing. And once it realized it was in the garage, it was thinking, oh crap, I'm up in these people's garage. Because it looked like it got up here and then pissed itself all over, excuse my language, but there's pee all in my garage, like he's saying. But at the time when we were breaking down with the flashlight, looking at the footprints and everything, that's what we thought. We thought that it had gotten so worked up and chased him up there that it didn't realize what it was doing.
And it was real oily.
Until it was too late. Yeah, and it was oily, like
it took forever to dry up.
Yeah, like I still have a mark from it, and it happened in March. It's going away, but it's like taking forever. I mean, I haven't washed it out or nothing, but you can see where still a track of it.
Let me ask you guys, what's going through your guys' mind at this point? I mean, what are you thinking is going on at this point?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I looked at him and said, we ain't telling one person about this. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I don't even know. All I know is what I just told you, and I don't, you know what I mean? We're just going to act like this didn't happen. But I told him, it still bothers me today. I will talk about Bigfoot. I don't care. I'm trying to figure out everything I can about him. But I'll tell you right now, I'd like to talk about what happened that night. Because I know I could have easily disappeared off this planet and no one had a clue where I went. You know what I mean? I've thought about that many times. I thought my wife's kids think I just wandered off or something. You know what I mean?
No, I definitely know what you mean.
And that's what I was thinking. It's just unnerving to know that something that quick, and I know for a fact if I'd have sat down under that bush for a few more seconds, thinking something bad would have happened, From that point on, we just kind of kept our ears and eyes open, didn't say nothing, and, little by little, this guy wasn't done. He started kind of making himself known, and that's when we realized we had something going on.
What was the time frame that you had your encounter, Matt, or Mick, where it chased you up to the house?
Well, I've had a couple encounters, both of us. We got curious, trying to figure it out, and we could hear him. Like we'd sit outside my garage at night, and out of curiosity, we wanted to see what it was. So from that point, we had started to sit outside my garage. I got like an owl call. Matt would make a call, and call back.
Hey, Mick, before that, we had gone into the woods, remember? And
oh, yeah.
No one really went in there other than, somebody might walk that creek, fish a little bit, but nobody walks that woods. It was really dense and overgrown stuff other than, the large paths cut through it. But
we got up one morning at like 7 in the morning, and we hiked from one edge all the way to the other. And there was footprints, and we...
Of all different sizes, like, we're sitting there just like, they whatever's back there running around barefoot wasn't worried about anybody else seeing it. That's what we're thinking.
And we actually saw a big gray one follow us like 100 yards, 150 yards back the whole time. And we took pictures on our phone.
And that's when I noticed that.
The different footprints, and we were seeing... This is when we had our first actual seeing them. And it was letting us see it. Like it was letting us know it was there.
Yeah, and we were hearing that faint. Remember I told you about the owl call? This is how all this started. It was like they were hollering back at each other with that same call. And I'm like, dude, that's exactly what they're doing. But it was just quieter,
So Matt has this encounter where it chases him up past the driveway, up into the home. And then you guys decide, both you and your brother decide to go walk the property, and you start finding these footprints. You start finding signs of them. You actually saw one. What did it look like when you actually saw it in the forest? How would you describe it?
It was, I would say personally that, you know, I didn't know what to expect, but what I noticed about it was like the master of blend. At first, he was like, dude, there's one right behind us over here. And at first I'm thinking, I don't see nothing until I saw it kind of rocking, you know what I mean? You looked at it long enough, and then I realized it was, I mean, the way I would describe it is it always stayed like 2 tiers in, you know what I mean? Always had something in front of it, you know, branch hanging down or a tree in front of it. You get to a point, you had to look through it to see it, and then you'd see it. And he wasn't worried about us seeing him. He tracked us all the way down the bank.
And at this point, we were already so far in that we would have to go back towards him to get out. So we just went ahead and took our way out. Yeah. Like you guys are probably, like you're thinking, why, if you saw that, why didn't you get out? Well, he was behind. The way we came in, he was behind us. So we couldn't turn around and go back because he was back there behind us. Like he was trailing us. So our only option was to hike on out.
Can you describe for the audience what you actually saw? I realize it's glimpses, it's you know, hiding itself in brush, which is pretty consistent to what a lot of witnesses say. But the other few glimpses that you got of this gray creature, can you describe to the audience what you saw?
Yeah, he was probably about, I would say, 9 feet tall, and he was gray. I say he, I'm not sure if it was a he or she, but you know how sloths grow algae in their fur?
Yeah.
Like they have this, it was almost like the tips of his fur looked greenish, like he had some kind of,
yeah, like he had seaweed draped over his shoulders or something.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but like the tips of his...
It was green.
He had longer hair, and the tips of it were like a greenish color, like...
And I realized I was telling you this sounds a little... You know, we're telling you it had green hair. I'm saying that we assume it has something on its hair, like, but it was green. And it was blending very well. And, you know, there was one huge kind of flat clearing to the right side of us, bank, and creek to the left of us, was the only time that he stood out among, you know, there was a kind of clearing in the undergrowth or whatever, and he let us know.
He just stood there.
Right there.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? Like, that's when it all kind of, because you can always second guess what you're seeing, even if you see it, until it steps out.
Would you describe it more of chimp-like, ape-like, man-like? How would you describe what you saw?
I would
say ape, except for their face is more, they look like an ape, except for the way they move. Like, I don't know how to describe it. What we saw looks like an ape, but the face looks...
Yeah, they all have a distinct face. You know, there's a lot of them that have the same features. You know, they got the dark hair, thick hair, above the brow, below the bottom lip. And then you have... But they have
a nose, a wide, flat nose.
Like apes look all alike. These don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they all look different.
That's how I would describe it.
You can distinctly tell them apart. Like some of them resemble, but they all look different in the face. It's like you know how humans look different?
Yeah.
You can tell humans apart. They look different, but it's in a different way. I don't know how to put it into words. Matt, you're better at that than me. Like I'm trying to.
Yeah, I got pictures, okay, and I could literally name them by size, shape, and you know, their features. There is one that looks more animal than the rest. There's, you know, it'd be hard pressed to pick out some skin on it. And then there's another one that looks really chimp-like. I mean, down to the mouth and everything, as far as kind of sticking out a little bit, you know what I mean? Like puffs his lips out. But other than that, they all look kind of like you'd think a hairy hominid would look, you know what I mean? That's kind of the thing. This has gone on for long enough to where we've set up cameras, we've gotten real close and personal. And so we've had more questions than answered, but we just kept kind of plugging away at it and watching what they do, and they've gotten comfortable around us. There's nothing I don't feel like we could do about it. We're not egging them on, but
it almost seems like they've gotten too comfortable with you guys. I think it's fascinating, though, how you guys describe them, because, that was one of the questions as we were all talking last night. I had asked Mike Humphreys that question at the Siege of Fanabia, and I had already told you guys this, but I had asked him that question. I'd said, hey, what do they look like? And he said, well, some of them look more ape-like, some of them look more chimp-like, some of them look more like a Down syndrome type person. It's not like one is identical to another. He goes, they just kind of have a different look. And that always kind of stuck with me. And then when you guys said that last night, that really hit me hard, because I was thinking back to the hours I spent on the phone with Mike Humphreys, the guy from Siege of Hanabi, and asked him, what is it that they look like? And he didn't really have like a direct answer for me. He said, well, there's one, the big one kind of looks more like an ape. He said there's another one that looks very much like a chimpanzee. There's one that looks kind of like a person with Down syndrome. He goes, they just kind of have a different look. And this has kind of turned your guys' world upside down, I would imagine. I mean, Jesus, going from sawing down a bush to being chased, all the way back up to the house by something.
Yeah, it's as it's gone on, it's totally consumed our life. Actually, it's we get many nights of no sleep, worrying about our family, worrying about the kids, worrying about the neighbors. Yeah, it's totally turned our.
Yeah, my biggest thing was, I grew up, I didn't grow up afraid of the dark. I'm not, I wasn't worried about dying every second day. So my biggest goal was, how are we going to get this to move on without, it's not like I told my family. I didn't tell anybody. I just kind of set up watch and put more lights out until it got to the point where they were getting so bold that you think they're going to come out and shake your hand. And that's when you're like, okay. Eventually you got to sit the watch the kids down and say, there's something going on. We waited until I had enough proof to where there wasn't going to be any denying it. Everybody, has heard things before and stuff, but you get my point. You don't want to, you think you want your kids to go to school and say that? No.
The spring, we had left our windows open. It was about 65 degrees. And we woke up, me and my wife, she tapped me. When I woke up in the middle of the night, and there's this deep guttural growling outside my window. And she was going, what's that? What's that? And it was them. They were outside my window. It's like they want me and my brother to come out there. And it's almost like if we don't go out there, then they come to our house and throw stuff at the house, knock on the windows. Like I have mulch around my house. They throw mulch against my windows. They toy with my dog. They'll go from window to window and tap on the window, and he'll run and bark back and forth for hours. Like they toy with him. They get on the roof, run across the roof until we come out, and then everything calm. Until one of them will get worked up, or it's like they get entertainment from us. It's totally. If we try to ignore them, then it makes it worse.
I was at his house when the first encounter happened. Okay, so he's down the street, not far. A week or so later, I was driving home, coming from the west side of my house, east side of my house, and I noticed there's a tree laying over my deck, and I'm thinking, what in the world? So I come up here, and I have a tree. I can't remember what kind it is or whatever, but branches out. You've got it's all one trunk up for about 2 feet, and it kind of, 5 parts branch out, and it's really tall, like 50 feet. Anyway, it had fallen over on my deck, so it was, equally sharing the weight between my deck, the ground, and the chimney. So I called Nick. He comes over. We take a chainsaw and cut it up. And as we were standing there trying to figure out how we wanted to take it down, right next to the base of the trunk are these big, huge footprints, and the toes were dug in. Like there was no question what that was. A buddy of mine, we had been siding the front of the house, and he had stopped by with something. I didn't say one word to him other than I hadn't said a thing to him about any of the sidewalk back there, and I go, hey, what's that look like right there? And I just pointed at the ground. He reached down and touched it. He goes, what in the world, dude? That's a footprint. I said, yeah, that's what it looks like to me. There was no denying it, is what I'm getting at. And so then I find out sometimes they push trees over. And I found that out later on because, we heard it. When they get worked up, a tree's going to get pushed over, a branch is going to get ripped off, or some animal's going to get brutally beaten is what's going to happen.
So it pushed a tree over on your home?
Well, I don't know that, but here's what I'm getting at is
It looked like it.
we go from, I had an encounter at his house, right? Walk through the woods, finding stuff. It kind of goes from me and his inside joke to me thinking, how's this thing find my house? Now I'm paranoid, like, this thing's trying to finish me off, you know what I mean? And then I start looking around property, and I start finding other footprints and places where it's setting up camp, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just been there once. And I'm thinking, this thing's stalking me. Now, you understand how it changed?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, how in the world did it find my house? Can it smell me? I mean, it's unnerving.
Yeah, and you both live in a pretty rural area. I mean, I realize you guys have neighbors, but I mean, for the most part, you're in a really rural area. Mick, you got chased by one. Do you want to tell us what happened with that?
Yeah, I talked to you. It was 4th of July weekend. You had called and checked. They hadn't been real active, fireworks, and I was like, yeah, it's been quiet. And it was like July 6th, and you said, I was just checking. I was curious how they were acting over 4th of July weekend. So it was July 6th, and I was here by myself. Wife and kids were gone, and I was out in the garage building a gun rack, just messing around, and I hear something. I hear the owl. It was doing that, like I don't want to know how my brother does it better, but he won't do it anymore because it attracts him. But it's like an owl, but it's not. Anyway, I heard it a couple times. So I have a bright flashlight, and it's like they play. You shine the flashlight at them, and you can see them, and they'll run out into the dark. So I heard them, so I step out. I'm shining the flashlight around. I go back in the garage, and it got louder. So I stepped out, and I could hear where they're at, the same spot where I can shine them every night. And I step out probably 15 feet from my garage, and I shine down there. And there's two of them. They're dodging the light, so they run behind this big pine tree. And they're looking around, so I play my little game with them. I act like I'm looking somewhere else, and I'll turn and I shine back. But when I shine back, it was the big one, the big gray one. And he wasn't dodging. I shine my light directly at him. He's staring right at me. And I had an uneasy feeling. I was like, okay. So he looks at me, and all of a sudden, he drops to all fours, and he starts coming at me. It's like 200 yards away. So I'm 15 feet from the garage. I run in the garage. As soon as I run in the garage, I hit the garage door. It starts to come down, and when it's about 3 feet from the ground, I have a big green trash can, and he throws it across in front of the garage door. And I see his feet run right behind it. And I shut the door, I run in the house, load my guns. He starts banging on my house. I have a sunroom in the back. He starts shaking the sunroom. Got on the roof, was running back and forth on the roof, outside yelling. That was probably the most terrifying night I've had this whole time. He tormented me till, actually, my dog was in my bedroom, between the bathroom and the bed, halfway underneath the bed. Usually he's barking. He didn't. He was like cowering underneath the bed. It was tapping on my windows, doing everything it could. It did it till 4:30 in the morning. It was probably the most terrifying night I've had. I didn't know what to do at that point. I just waited it out, and finally it left. But yeah, it dropped to all fours. Didn't run on 2 feet. It stared at me, and then all of a sudden, in one motion, it was on all fours, and I turned and came in, and I didn't see nothing until the trash can flew across the front of the door. And I saw its feet run behind it across the other door, but the other door was shut. That was the most recent. We were out last night, and it's a full moon, so on full moons, we always go out and try to keep them at bay because they're more aggressive on full moons. So if we stay out and shine our flashlights or kind of keep them occupied, then it keeps them from banging on the house or tormenting us, basically. But yeah, that was my...
That's really terrifying that it would chase you back up, just kind of the same way it did your brother. I mean, chased you right up. You said it was a gray color?
Yeah, it was the big gray one that we saw out in the woods. Like, I could see his... When I shined down there, I could see his skin, like through his hair. Like, I saw him plain as day, and he just stared at me like he wasn't moving. The other ones will dodge the light, play around. He was staring at me like... And I just had an uneasy feeling as soon as it shined down there because it wasn't the normal ones that I usually shine. The normal ones, we think they're, or we call them like the adolescents, like they're teenagers because they play. Like they like to, like they'll stay just outside the light, or you'll get them for a second. It's like they dodge the light and they run around or they'll crawl around. But when I shined back down there, those two were gone and he was standing there. I'm talking within 15 seconds.
Can you describe how he dropped all fours?
Effortlessly. Like one motion. Like if he was... See, this is where I have trouble describing how they move because it's so... This is my issue with these creatures. Everything they do is effortless. Like it was like a one motion. Like if he was to take a step forward, that doesn't make sense unless you see what I'm talking about. But like just as easy as like if he was taking a step forward, he dropped to all fours. It was in one motion. Like it was, I don't even know how to describe. It was just a fluent, like it was effortless. Like,
and I know what you mean, and that's why I wanted to ask you. I was telling you guys last night with my own encounter, it's like it just collapsed to all fours, but it was very, like you said, very effortlessly. It's almost like they're just as comfortable on all fours as they are up on two legs. I mean, it's almost the same.
Oh yeah, like they're everything they do is comfortable. Like they crawl on their bellies and they use their fingers and their toes. Like I've said that several times, but that's the creepiest thing I've ever seen. Like you'll catch eye shine close to the ground, you'll think, oh, and you'll look. But like we were at Matt's house one night and they're acting up, yelling, and I went over there, and we walked up, and he's got a hill on the side of his house, and we shined over there, and it was crawling on its belly. It's parallel to the ground, but they use their fingers and their toes to move. It's like an insect, but it's an 8-foot, effortless.
And it leaves divots in my yard where you can see where it's like it's just, fingers and toes.
I had one do that on the side of my house one night. I was probably 20 feet away from it, and I shined over there, and I have solar lights, and I thought it was a solar light, and I looked, and it was in the wrong spot, and I looked again, and it was on its belly, and it moved backwards in that motion on its fingers and toes. And I mean, every time I see that, it's unsettling. I don't know how to describe it, but
it is very unsettling. After our encounter, it's funny you say insect. Because I remember what he's saying, like a spider. They move like a spider.
Like it.
And he's right. That's kind of what we saw. I don't know if that's what you guys saw, but...
That's exactly how we...
Like a spider. They move like spiders when they're down, crawl. It's really creepy to see them use their fingertips and their back toes. And it sounds crazy, but until you see it, it's hard to describe.
When I saw that is when I really decided, I thought, I'm glad I'm not going through this by myself. You know what I mean? At least I got somebody, talk to it about or whatever. Say, did you see that? Because that's a lot.
Yeah, that's.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is, I remember when we came out with our encounter, took a lot of heat for that. People were saying, "Oh, they don't move that way." They don't, and I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm just telling you what I saw. It's not, they move like spiders on the ground. They can belly crawl. They can walk upright on two legs and be just as comfortable on all fours, or appear to be just as comfortable on all fours when they move on all fours."
Yeah, and when they're on all fours, it looks like they're supposed to be on all fours.
It does, yeah.
That's what like you're saying. It's like it's effortless. Whatever they do, the way they move is fast and smooth and effortless. Whatever they decide to do. If they decide to jump up in a tree and go up, they can go up a tree instantaneously. Like, everything they do is... Strength. Yeah, like they just grab a tree and they're up it. Like, I mean, it's...
Yeah, and I think that's why there's the paranormal comes into this field. if you want my honest opinion, I was telling you guys last night, Woody still is on the fence whether this is a paranormal thing or not. And if you ask him why, the reason why is because they don't move like anything else on this planet. They move very natural and unnaturally. I know that doesn't make any sense, but it's very effortless for them to do it, but it seems so unnatural to us to watch what they do and how they move and how they react to different things. Tell me about the neighbors in the area.
Yeah, we went back behind the property across the street. Mike, across the street from me, there's houses, and then behind the houses, you have, I'd say, 100 yards of woods, but they're cleared out. It's like a backyard, beautiful houses, but the woods are cleared out. The trees are all still there, but in between the trees, all the brush and stuff's been cleared out. So it's a clearing until this creek. Then behind the creek, another 100 yards, and some of it goes back for miles. And then to the right of my house, 100 yards past the creek is a reservoir. But anyway, I was out after I talked to you, actually, and my neighbor across the street, he's an elderly man, and he comes down, and he's got a bad back, and he said, Mick. So I go down to his driveway to meet him because I don't want him to have to walk. Anyway, I go down there, and he's like, hey, I wanted to let you know the other night. And I said, yeah. So I thought he was going to say something about this. And he goes, well, I know you got that little boy, and I saw a raccoon look pretty rough the other night. He goes, I was going to tell you at night, make sure you keep an eye on him. Don't let him get outside. I said, oh, I don't. And I said, there's other things out here at night. And he kind of looked at me, and he goes, what do you mean? And I said, yeah, there's stuff out here that I can't explain. Because I'd been fighting because I wanted to go there and talk to him anyway about it. Because I know we've sat outside my garage, and there's no way on earth that he hadn't heard what we've heard, or it slapped his house, actually, and he brought this up. But anyway, he said, what are you talking about? And he kind of grinned at me like he was waiting for me to say it first. And I said, well, I've been fighting this with you, but I said, the only way I can describe it is a Sasquatch. And he grinned. He goes, yeah, they're out there. And I said, are you kidding me? I said, I know they're out there. And he goes, no. He goes, they're out there. We all know about it. He goes, the lady down the street, she set up cameras and takes pictures of them. And I said, so all you guys know? And he goes, yeah. I said, so that's why you go in before dark. And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, they've been here for years. But he goes, until recently, they don't bother us. And he goes, the other night, one slapped my house. And he goes, I got my 30-06 loaded. And I said, yeah. I said, we were sitting out in my driveway when it slapped your house. And he goes, really? He goes, well, next time they're outside my house, call me. So I said, okay. But anyway, he let me know that all these elderly people around here already know that they're out there. They took pictures. The lady had taken them to the police because she thought that they were, she said that there's black people back there living. But he said that he looked at the pictures and it wasn't, there was hair. And she took it to the police, and the police said, well, there's nothing we can do about that. So basically he said they know, they just don't want nothing to do with it. And then Matt's neighbor down the street from him, I'll let him tell that story, but yeah, slowly, I talked to another man riding a bike. He told me he carries a gun. He heard a scream at night. He don't know what it is, but he said he doesn't stay out after dark. And he said he carries a gun that can knock down anything he knows about. So they've all slowly have come and said something about it. But Matt's neighbor, I'll let him tell a story about that. But
Matt, what did your neighbor say?
He stands out in his driveway a lot, kind of paces around his house, just his way. My wife is down there talking to his wife, and he came out and said, hey, I saw something down there by your house the other night. She's like, oh, yeah? What's that? He was like, I don't know. I'd call it a Bigfoot. And she just looked at him, and, my wife had heard a couple things, but, she's just been let in, and unfortunately, and I had never talked to that guy before, nothing. I have talked to him since, and I don't never see him anymore. But there for a while, they were keeping it pretty quiet with everyone else. But it was almost like since they had known that me and him knew they were there, they weren't worried about us. You know what I mean? But they still, use discretion everywhere else. Well,
he said that he watched it walk across. He said he watched it walk across the road and beside Matt's garage.
Yeah,
he
walked
sitting out there and he watched
my tree, and it stood under my tree for a while, watching me in the garage, and then walked on around the, down the ditch, like the little drainage creek or whatever. And I said, "You sure it wasn't so-and-so?" And he said, "Unless they're 9 foot tall." I was like, "Yeah, nice." So that's when I started, setting up cameras around my property, and I've gotten like wild ass crap there or something.
It's so fascinating, and it's so hard to. I know there's so much information you guys have. There's so many run-ins you guys have had. It's hard to cram that into like an hour show or an hour and a half show. But for the audience, Matt or Mick, whichever one you guys want to go at it, you guys have seen 3 distinct creatures. Can you describe the creatures that you've seen?
Well, we've seen, like last night, I saw 6 different ones just at my house, and he was here at his house too. At this point, we kind of separate. I'll stay at my house and sit outside the garage, and he'll stay at his house and sit outside the garage, especially on full moons. Then we have our nights off. We used to sit together and keep them at bay, but now that they're at both houses, we'll sit, and if they start getting aggressive at one, then we'll drive to each other's house and chase them off, bring guns, cock them, whatever, and chase them off. But around my house, there's the ones that look more apish. But at his house, he's got 3 distinct. He's got one he calls Furry Face. And he's covered in. He's got fur all over his face. But he's the smart one. Like, we've came to a conclusion that if it ever got to where we had to fight these off, like, where Siege of Zenobia, where they come in, they're aggressive because they keep getting more and more aggressive. He's the one we got to take out first because he is the brains of the operation. But he's not the biggest one, but he's the smartest by far.
Now, what makes you think he's the smartest?
Well, I've got it on camera, him directing the others. I know it sounds strange. I'm only telling you because I believe you believe me. What I'm saying is, that's why for a while I didn't want to go on the show. I said, why in the world would I do that? You know what I mean? I've seen things that people be like, right, I got you. You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to say I would have said that before this. I've been like, I ain't mad at you, and I ain't going to call you a liar, but they're very intelligent.
When you say directing, what do you mean?
They have a noise for everything, a knock for everything, they communicate that way. They pop their lips, their teeth. I've seen him motion with his arm, and if they don't go, he'll bark at them, you know what I mean? Like, and they'll go. And I'm like, this guy is like, he's telling them where's the safe place at and where you're going to go. It's very bizarre, but I thought, it makes sense, I guess. These things have made it their business to stay out of sight, and they're good at it. Like I told you last night, the conclusion I've come to, if I had to say, they said, what's their trait that they could be known by? I would say low to no risk. They will not take it. You know what I mean? People say they know what guns are. I don't believe that. I believe they think if they don't know what it is, stop traffic. They're not taking a chance. You know what I mean? You can pull a popsicle out of your pocket, and if they ain't never seen one, they're going to hit the brakes because they're not risking it. Their whole thing is survive and stay hidden.
It's fascinating you mentioned that. In the primate world, in the non-human primate world, you always have an alpha male. You always have one that kind of directs traffic. And that goes with chimpanzees, that goes with apes, there's a hierarchy of authority among non-human primates. And I think that's fascinating that you bring that up. And so the one you're talking about...
He is not the alpha. But what I'm saying is, he's next in line. You know what I mean? In the alpha,
the alpha stays hidden unless...
Yeah, if you
we don't ever really know what happens. Yeah. When you hear him, it's distinct, and you know it's him, and he talks.
He will echo through the woods like, "Broadhead." I mean, that's like bellows, and they come running to him. It's weird, it's strange, but he gets their attention, and they do exactly what he says. And I've heard trees come down. I've heard him grab a coon up, sound like, I've heard coons fight and everything. No, this is like he grabs it by the back, slings it around, torments it, and then smacks it off a tree. Like, when he gets up and walks over there, something's going down. You know what I mean? Very, very strange.
When you say he talks, what do you mean?
You can hear him talk, yeah. I mean, I can't understand what words he's saying or nothing, but he's distinctly talking to them, and he talks loud. He's not trying to hide it.
I listened to Sierra. We listened to Sierra sounds one night, and that's what it sounds like. It's like a gurgling.
His is a little more deep and drawn out. You know what I mean? But it's that same kind of. I can't make out what he's saying, but he's definitely communicating.
Yeah, and you can hear them talk back, but that's the only time they do it is when he does it.
That's interesting.
And before you ever see him, you'll hear. We hardly ever hear like knocks. You know, people are like, "Wow, we would knock," and all this. We don't hear nothing about that. The only time we ever hear wood knock, that means Daddy's coming, and you hear half of them just rolling out. And we think it's the women and children are out. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, he clears out them to safety, and then he comes out like, and then the other adolescents, whoever, run around him like, Daddy's here. You know what I mean? It seems weird, but that's how it goes down.
No, not as weird as you would think.
Yeah, they definitely have a distinct system of how they move and communicate and...
Yeah, and if he gets aggravated, we've heard it several times, and it's like a dad yelling at his kid. He just gets worked up and he yells louder and louder, and you will hear a tree fall in the forest. And you'd be lucky if that's all you hear. It's like he keeps them in line. They'll get worked up, right? The other adolescents or, all their angst built up. I told Mick, maybe when the, full moons are active, or maybe when the females are in heat, I don't know. But they'll get worked up, and then he'll come out there and knock it off, pretty much.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you guys have seen that alpha male then?
Yeah,
he's the big gray
way
one.
Bigger than the rest.
He's huge.
He's way taller. And
the other one that you guys mentioned, does it have hair all over its face? You said it was hairy?
Yeah, he's the one that I'll put it to you like this, like I told you, 3 of my buddies. I don't tell people this, but I got 3 buddies. I told you used to come over and hang out all the time. I'd have to run them off around the arc. Finally, I'd tell them, like, this is what's going down. They didn't question me at all. You know what I mean? They're like, wow, that's crazy. I want to see it. Well, at 3 different times, I said, stop by sometime. They'd call, come by, and I'd take them out there to see it. And they split. They hit the Jeep and say, I'm done here, dude. Ain't come back. They're like, I ain't mad at you, but I ain't coming back out there because they're not cute. It's not what you think. You see it, and then you're thinking, I can't believe what I'm looking at. They're huge. They're not pretty. That's what I was supposed to say about this one. I call him Furry Face because he's the only one. He was a dapper, man. He's got hair all over him, and it looks well kept. And that's the only one that looks like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to explain it. He's just, he keeps it clean. You know what I mean? He's the one that runs it. The rest of them, some of them really, you said that Down syndrome thing earlier. There's a couple of them. You're like, wow, man. The bridge of their mouth, where their teeth, snaggled up even, like, you know what I mean? Like it's not healthy. All of their coats look healthy. But I'm saying as far as their face, there's a couple of them that, they got hit by an ugly stick or something. And I'm saying if you see that, that's why, like, my wife and kids, they're in before dark. I don't want them to see nothing like this. They don't need that in their head.
What do the other 2 look like?
Well, here's like I described it before. The furry one, he's always at my house. Like Operation Me, you know what I mean? And then there's a big one, I call him the ogre. He's not real smart. He'll walk out and stand in front of a game cam for 7 minutes. So every 30 seconds he gets flashed in the face and ain't figured out to move yet. And then there's another one he looks most chimp-like. And you barely see him. I mean, that dude is quick, and he's smaller than the other 2, and you will see him, but not for long. You know what I mean? And then the rest, it's like they just come to spectate. And it's like that guy said last night, it's like we're their television. Hey, you guys bored? Let's go over here and check these guys out. They already know we're here. You know, that's what it seems like.
How often are they getting on the homes, on the roof? How often are they coming up close to the house? And what have you guys tried to get them to back off?
Well, I'll just tell you about my situation. Mine is, they're like, only way I can describe it is kind of like, you know, they need attention, right? So, let's say I'm not outside at all. I'm in before, you know, I'm in at by 5 p.m. and I ain't back out. You know, I might hear some noises or whatever, and, you know, they get louder and louder. Might get some tapping on the window. Like my daughter says, it's like we're in a fishbowl. I'm like, yep. They don't bang it like they're going to break it. You just hear that pump, 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 you know. And the longer I don't come out, they'll run on my roof to where it sounds like, you know, they might come through it. But if I come out the door, they'll start whistling back and forth like, there he is. You see what I'm saying? It's like a fascination that you know is sick and you don't want to end up dying from it. But sometimes they're more aggressive, sometimes they're not. But it's almost like if I'm in my garage working or whatever and I ignore them, you know, they will demand your attention. Like I told you the story about me turning my stereo up in there, just, you know, kind of messing with them. Because I was like, shut up, you know. And then they were like screaming at me to the point where I had my stereo like ready to melt the windows in my garage. You know, it's like 1 a.m. I know my neighbors are like, what in the world's going on over there? Well, they all woke up, saw it firsthand. The neighbors across the street, you know, garage door opens, they're gone. You know what I mean? It's like everybody, but they weren't going to be, you know, appeased that night is what I'm getting at. I ended up having to call Mick and say, hey, dude, could you kind of clear them out with your truck so I can get to the house? You know what I mean? Because I wasn't going to walk to the house. I'd already seen 6 of them right outside my garage door. So that's what I'm saying, because most of the time, you know, they stay, you know, at a respectable distance, and sometimes you think, am I going to get a hug? I mean, how close is this thing going to get, you know? But they've never, I will say, I've never had one show his teeth at me or growl at me or nothing. You know, they do, like, kind of pop their lips and shatter their teeth. That's about it. But they will scream at you. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not giving them attention. Next thing is, you know, he don't really hang out outside like that, so they smack his windows inside of his house, and, you know, like, he'll have them throwing stuff at the side of the house like a, you know,
I go outside my house like 3 times a night. Usually right after it gets dark, we've kind of figured out that across the street from me, there's a pathway that goes straight back between 2 houses. It's a clear path to the thick woods. And then about 200 yards down, there's another path that's got hedges about 10 feet high that go all the way to the street from the woods. And there's a patch of woods right behind the houses to the. I have a house diagonal to the left and a house diagonal to the right. And my house is right in between. Well, right there's a path that goes all the way back. So we've kind of figured it out. We were talking about it last night. We think that, like, they come through here to get to the neighborhood. Like, this is their entry. So what I do is right after dark, you can hear them vocalize and yell. So I'll go out there and let them know I'm out there. And then they either go away or whatever. And if I hear something, like I can hear them in the house yelling or screaming or something. So I'll go outside, take my flashlight, shine my flashlight down, stay out there for a half hour. Some nights I stay out there all night, but usually I go out there about 3 times a night. Or in the middle of the night, if I hear something that wakes me up, I'll step outside with the flashlight. I'll take my 45 just in case, and I'll step outside. But I make sure that they know I'm out there, because if I don't, it's like he said, if you don't show any, if you ignore them, it gets worse. So if you just let them know that you're there, kind of, it keeps them from doing the aggressive, scaring the family. You know what I mean?
Have you guys tried lighting the property up?
Oh, yeah.
We got lights all around it.
The first thing we did is went crazy buying lights, and but they don't care anymore. Like at my house, that don't bother them. I thought about only, it's like that guy said, let it up like a stadium. I don't think they care. They walk in the lights I have now.
Yeah, I know that when we spoke to Jim last night, Jim Lansdale, he was saying put some bird shot in a shotgun and shoot it in their general direction. It almost kind of seems like they're just screwing with you guys. When they're running you down and you're running into the home, they could easily catch you. I mean, if they really wanted you, they could easily catch you.
Yeah, I know.
And so it makes me wonder if they're just...
They could come in any second of any day and get us.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Once you understand, when you see them move and walk and climb and everything, you realize that they're not, killers, or we'd all be dead. I'm telling you right now. You just don't know what, you don't want to set them off or have one of your kids set them off, or, you see what I'm saying? That's where the unease comes in. Because I'll cuss at them. I'll yell at them, and they'll back off. But
we don't run from them unless they run at us. Like we try, like we've joked before, like they don't know what to do with us because... Yeah, the only time I'll run is if they're coming at me, and anybody in their right mind is going to run. Like, you see one of these things and it's coming at you, you're going to run. I don't give a crap I don't care who you are. I will say this on air. Anybody in this world would run if one of these things is running at you. So we've been trying to be aggressive, but you don't have a choice. Like, this isn't, if you were going to kill one, it's not an easy kill. It's not like...
Funny. When somebody's like, oh, man, I'll check that thing out. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Yeah, it all changes. We've several times we've watched that transition. We just stand back and watch them. Yeah, go ahead, man, go ahead. They're like, well, go on in here and check it out. I'm like, go ahead, knock yourself out. And they're like, shouldn't we tell them to stop? I'm like, no, man, let them go. They got to figure it out. And it's like, you want to watch tail between the legs. Everybody thinks they're bad until you see them, and it's not what you think.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not like they ain't got big fangs and they ain't trying to kill you. I'm saying it's just that you ain't used to seeing that kind of size and girth, and you get my point. It's real humbling is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. And I know you guys aren't researchers, you guys aren't investigators, they just kind of showed up on your property, and you guys are wanting them to just go away. And that might be one way to get them to go away. The bird shot's not a bad idea. You're not going to kill one by doing it, and you're not going to maim one by doing it, but it's going to get them to back off every time. If you guys decide to come out. See, the problem I think you guys are running into is they're getting used to the fact that they can bang on your house and you'll come out. You guys are playing the game. They'll come out. They tap on your windows. They mess with you guys will come out. The minute you guys go in, the tapping, all the other stuff gets worse and worse and worse. But I think in your guys' situation, I honestly would try the birdshot thing. I'd fire off a shot, let them know you guys mean business. You're not playing around. I'd definitely put a couple slugs like we talked about towards the end of that birdshot just in case you need it. The more I thought about what Jim said, when he first said that, I cringed. But I think he might be right. I think it might be the best way to get them to back off of the property, back off of you guys. For the most part, they're probably not going to leave, but they may back off the property, quit screwing with you guys, quit running on the roof, quit tapping on the windows, messing with your dog. I have a feeling it's going to probably be more than one show with you guys. It's one of those things to where will you guys give me an update on if you try the birdshot thing? Let me know if it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's my thing about that. I hear you guys say that, okay? But we've sat out here in front of my garage and in front of his garage, and they move in pairs of twos, and they've strategically, like they'll surround us. Like we'll get them behind, we'll get 150 yards down the road, where we can see them. They're showing themselves like plain as day. 2 between the houses across my street, 2 across the street to the left. They surround us. It's like they're strategically... So here's my thing with the bird shot. If I shoot bird shot at one of them, okay, and then I got 2 of them 50 yards to my left, I got another 2 50 yards to my right, and I shoot at one group of them, that's a good idea, but what if it pisses them off? Like, I'm not trying to be argumentative. This is where I would have to be 120% sure that that's going to chase them off. Because what are you going to do if you got all of them groups? They're like, oh, he tried to shoot him, so they come at you. Then you got your hands. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
It's like we were talking.
Yeah, no, I understand.
If you're walking through the woods, right? This is what I'm betting. If you're walking through the woods and you hear one call or it cracks a stick and makes you look at it, that means you are right on top of another one. Because that's what they do. They misdirection. Like, you start getting up on one, they hunker down, freeze. And then it's another one's job to make sure and distract you. See my point? Like, I walked down the bank one day, and there was one laying on the bank, sunning, like, no care in the world. And I've been down, and I'm looking with a binocular, and as I'm watching this one, my lens fills with black. The dude stepped right in front of me. You get my point? Like, they're going to distract you away from the little ones, the females, and then each other. You'll know, like, don't even look at the little ones. Because if you are, every one of them staring at you. You know what I mean? And it's like the females, you don't want her to make a noise. Because if she does, they get worked up. You get my point? It's like there's definitely, everybody's got their place, their rules, and they're pecking order, I guess.
Well, I'm not saying that it can't go bad.
Yeah.
That's why I cringed when he first said it. But I think if you're wanting them to go away, and birdshot really isn't, especially if you're shooting from a distance, it's going to make really more noise than it's going to do anything. And it might get them to back off of it. Now, could it upset them? Could it enrage them? Absolutely. It's hard to say what to do in this situation because you guys have tried the lights. I know you guys have tried game cams. I know you guys have tried cameras. And from our conversation in the past, it seems like the whole neighborhood, the moment it starts getting dark, everyone goes in, shuts the blinds, shuts the door, locks everything. It's pretty much a ghost town. This might get them to back off, though, away from your home. The only other option I would give you guys is to ignore them. Now, for about 2 weeks, that may not work. They may come bang on the house. They may get on the roof. They may do... But after a while, they'll lose interest. See, I think there's only two ways to make them go away. One is they lose interest in you. You're no longer entertaining. Or two, you start... The birdshot's a good idea. Again, you're not going to kill one. You're not even going to really maim one if you hit it with birdshot. And I think it'll give a clear message to them to back off. You're not playing anymore. Back off. But in the same breath, I'd put 2 slugs at the towards the end of that birdshot, just in case you need it. But I want you guys to do what you're comfortable with. I mean, these are options. Obviously, lights aren't working, cameras aren't working. They're not leaving. They're really not stopping messing with you guys. The one thing I thought was interesting is on July 4th, you guys had no activity. It's almost like the forest was a ghost town.
I think at this point, it's almost like overgrown family group or something. And it's just spilling out of the woods.
Keep me updated on what happens there, will you? Let me know if the birdshot, if you guys decide to do that, let me know what happens when you guys do that. The only other thing you can do is ignore them. All the old-fashioned stuff of lighting the place up and putting cameras up, none of that's working. So this is kind of plan B. I'd be really curious to see what works. If you guys aren't comfortable shooting at them, then the only other thing I tell you is try and ignore it, see if it goes away. Light the place up and ignore it. Go to bed, turn the TV on, and hopefully they'll back off the property is the only other thing I would recommend.
I will let you know, but, we've been at this for months. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of a trial and error thing. And I think our biggest concern is it looks a little bit like appeasement, right? But on the other hand, it's, if I got to go out here, stand here for 20 minutes so you guys can whistle, whatever, as long as, as long as you stay home. You get my point?
Yeah.
So you just don't want to do that one thing that causes something that ends up being a story of the ages. I got a wife and kids, man.
Yeah,
I'm not here for that. I've moved. Like, we're pretty close to it now. But it's just, I don't want to make the paper. I ain't trying to get famous. I don't want nothing about it other than them to keep on moving down the road, and they're not doing it. So we might try the buckshot. Might send the wife and kids somewhere just in case they do get crazy. But you can understand where we're coming from, though. It's like, this is where I live, right?
Yeah, no, I understand. You don't want to make it worse. You don't want to make it worse than what it is.
Right.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
My daughter works in the morning. I pull her car up to the front door, like in the grass, up the hill in my yard. You get my point? So that she's got to take 4 steps to get to it. I don't want nothing to happen to nobody, so, That's my point. You got responsibilities. You think you don't want nothing you did to cause something. Because I got a long life to live, and I don't want to have to deal with that. You know what I mean? So I guess you got to look down the road.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Try to manage it, and if not, you might have to move, I guess. But it's an interesting situation, I can tell you that. I would have never guessed it in a million years.
Well, Mick and Matt, I appreciate you guys coming on the show, man. I appreciate you guys sharing the encounter, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. I'll be following up with you guys on this.
All right. Good talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. And that's it for tonight, everyone. I will return on Sunday, heading out to Beachfoot. Looking forward to it. Have a great weekend, everyone.